Welcome to Moveable Dough. This is Steve Danielson. Join me each week as we explore the minds of living composers. We talk about their lives, their musical journeys, and of course, their music. For a complete archive of episodes as well as access to the shorter segments called Movable Snippets, visit my website sdcompose.com/moveabledough. Hey, this is Steve. Thanks for joining me for this episode of Moveable Dough. My guest today is Dr. Laurie de Leonne. Formerly known as Laurie Betts Hughes, Laurie earned her bachelor's in piano and musicology from Oberlin Conservatory of Music, a master's in choral conducting from Colorado State University, and a DMA in choral conducting from the University of Washington. Go Huskies. Her compositions have been performed throughout the United States by ensembles such as the Colorado Chorale, Cora Voce, Casper Children's Chorale, North Seattle College Choir, and Orchestra Unlimited, just to name a few. Laurie was a national finalist in the BMI John Lennon Songwriting Competition, and her pieces are available through Walton, Santa Barbara Music Publishing, and self-published through Dandelion Music Press. Laurie de Leonne, welcome to Moveable Dough.
Thank you. What a thrill.
So as I was reading your bio, I found out that you and I are the same age. Both born in 1977, which is probably the best year ever.
Best. Clearly.
So I would like to know about your childhood since we were growing up at the same time. Where did you grow up?
Well, I grew up most of the way in the outskirts of Washington, D.C., Rockville, Maryland. My folks were older. This was a second/third marriage. And so they retired and we moved to Arizona and I went to high school in Arizona.
So was your family musical when you were growing up?
My mom was. You don't even mess with mom on Tuesday nights. Mom goes and does her thing.
Uh-huh.
And she was a charter founding member of the Choral Arts Society of Washington and had answered an ad in the paper to get a pickup group together to do Messiah one year. And that's how Choral Arts Society of Washington was born.
Oh, wow.
And so when I was old enough, I got to go to choral concerts in the Kennedy Center. And she decided 8 was old enough, and I was just biding my time, waiting to go. And I got to see all kinds of really awesome things with Mom's Choir. So.
Oh, that's fantastic. So were you doing piano lessons or
Yeah.
school ensembles and things like that?
Yep. All the things I could, yeah, but piano lessons was the thing. So, and at some point, there were 2 careers that I only ever wanted. I wanted to be first a pilot. I think it was inspired by Top Gun, and I'm going to fly for the military. At some point, it dawned on me that like my vision is not good enough, and they don't accept LASIK correction, and you're not tall enough, and you're not really a jock, and that's really more the type that they want. And, oh, by the way, you're a gal. We don't let those guys fly. And so this is, things have all changed now, but at the time it was just demoralizing. And then shortly thereafter, I had some epiphany. Oh, I'm going to be a musician. And Mom says, oh, you're going to be a classical pianist. That's great. And I went, okay. And then the journey from there was discovering really what it means to be a musician and the diversity in the career.
Fantastic. Well, since you and I were teenagers at the same time in the early 1990s, I'm just curious what sort of music you were listening to on the radio.
I have a heart for classic rock, and I have an amusement when I say classic rock because that's not classic rock, that's actual rock. But now they're all like dad metal and stuff. But I always had this sense that I was going to live in Seattle because of the music. And I'm thinking Pearl Jam and Soundgarden and Love Bone. And here I am in Seattle because of the music.
Probably not as much Pearl Jam these days, though.
Yeah. Well, they have tribute bands. That's the thing.
Well, that's true.
So
when did you start writing music?
Pretty shortly after starting piano lessons. And as outgoing as I am and outspoken as I am, like this was a privy, deep, dark secret. Like people did not know. And it was, I talk about this innocently at like 6 and 7 writing songs,
Mm-hmm.
and those are sweet. But this habit stuck. And, and it's going on into high school and like one song a month and like lyrics and arrangements. And like there was a friend, my sweet friend Allegra, later elementary, I would draft her in and teach her the parts, and the parents would come by. What are you guys playing? Nothing. Bach, some child of Bach. I don't know. You've never heard of him. You know? Yeah, but then in college, kind of like more overtly and more overtly, but that seemed uncommunicable. I would have rather had someone read my diary, frankly, than to know that I wrote music.
That's funny.
Yeah.
So I know that you've studied, both composition and conducting. Would you say that you're more of a conductor or a composer, or would you say it's sort of split between the two?
Every year it gets more and more further split and divided. So I'm not really sure what I am anymore, and I'm discovering that, like, by definition, um, you almost have to be of service to the medium, what's required. Oh, can't afford the orchestra. I guess I'm an arranger now because we need a string quartet.
Uh-huh.
It's like, gee, I want to program this thing, but, I can't find this piece that I want. I'm gonna write it, and um, I have a pragmatism now as a single mom that, like, if they want to hire me, I'm going to go do that. You want me to perform? I'm happy to perform. I will go learn that thing for you and, present to confidence in the first parts and then go on the back end and work like mad. But same thing, I have a little bit more of a pragmatism about writing and conducting now that if I'm going to write, it's not going to be so much on spec anymore. It's going to be because I know now that's 15 hours a week for 2 or 3 months,
Right.
to do good writing. And so it's more like, do you have a use for this piece? Do you want to perform the piece after it's written? Because I'd be delighted to write that, instead of just, emoting. I tend to
Right.
do that more in songwriting now. That's just for me.
There you go. So you do write online that your influences are Ralph Vaughan Williams, Ruth Crawford Seeger, and Joni Mitchell. So what elements of each of these three do you see in your writing?
For Ralph Vaughan Williams, I would say it's the romantic expressionism of the well-crafted counterpoint.
Mm,
I really took to heart the parallel octaves and the parallel fifths and the doubled chord tones. But, like, man, they gotta serve. I'm not as you know dogmatic as any of the big B's. It's not Bach level or Brahms level or any of that stuff. But, Ray Vaughan Williams kind of pushes against it for the service of getting the colors of the folk music. And I really like that. Like, there are times that there are parallel fifths because that is serving, but not to the point where we're really about losing independence of line. It's just that they all of a sudden they have become one line.
right.
Um, yeah. And so Ruth Crawford Seeger, was off collecting American folk music for the service of teaching children, but yet in her own right, there's this piece of arranging, there's maybe some early art song kinds of
Hmm.
things going on, but there's a pragmatism, there's a service element. Um, these resources almost exist because of her need to transmit this knowledge. And then Joni is just this, emotive, prolific songwriter that just defies description. And I can, in my mind's ear, hear all the criticism that she got. Like, well, what is she? Is she a jazz musician? Is she a rock leader? Is she a singer, indie pianist? Like, the heck is she doing on the guitar? Is that thing even tuned right? I don't know. And so I love that too, that in a lot of ways, I have nothing to add to the tone cluster pointillism in choral music right now.
Hmm.
It's just, I'm not very esoteric until I am for some other purpose. So I have my own drummer, and I'm going to just let other composers do their thing and shine on this thing that I cannot really contribute to.
I think
So,
that's fantastic because I can definitely hear all three of those things in the music you write. So I think that's great. So I'd love for you to tell us about Blurry May, your collaboration with Bill
oh gosh.
Baxter.
I think Bill Baxter might be both my voice teacher and my guitar teacher.
Oh yeah.
And he's a friend of mine. And that was another big revelation to realize that, like, oh, I could have friends with the people that I sing in choir with, even though, like, I'm on the front seat and they're on the risers. And so at some point, like I started having personal friends, and Bill, just kind of yearns to be involved and sing, and is open. He's fun to work with, and the two of us were going to just stay after rehearsal one day and do this open mic at Google because I was directing the Google staff choir, and he was in it. And so we're kind of going offline from classical to rock, and doing these things. And did a couple of those things. And then I was like, oh, I wonder what other open mics there are. And by gosh, we could not get our schedules to align. He's a family man too. And with a day job, go
Hmm.
figure, And so the place we wanted to do the open mic, I was like, I was asking them, like, if my choirs could perform there, and I didn't have enough music for a full set. And I was like, well, what if my acoustic duo takes the second half of the set? And they said, sure. I was like, hey, Bill, guess what? And then, so we started working up the other half of the set for the choir, to fill this out. And the venue writes and says, all right, well, we need a name for you guys. What's your name? I was like, oh, I'll get right back to you on that. I was like, hey, Bill, we're a band now. What's our name? And then so Blurry May arose out of the pre-pandemic digital collaborations that we would kind of do.
Uh-huh.
He would record something, and then I would kind of work up a virtual duet and kind of send it back. And so our file names were like Laurie Bill, Laurie Bell, and they started mutating. And I kicked one back, and it was Blurry, and then we'd put the month on there and the date, so it was Blurry May, which sounded kind of interesting to us. But like, yeah, this kind of arose out of a friendship in a cross-genre way, and then we started co-writing together,
Well, that's very cool.
which was fun too. And pandemic kind of squashed us, and then I moved. So, but we have these remote skills and these tech skills, so it's just a matter of time at this point.
So I'm also interested in your choir called East Side Midday Singers.
Yes.
Yeah, so this is a choir that rehearses during people's lunch hour, is that right?
Yeah.
So
So,
it's such a unique model. How did this all come about?
thank you. Well, I had a business model that the pandemic has kind of squashed. And so currently, Eastside Midday Singers is looking possibly to rebrand and sort of shift.
Uh-huh.
But I was in the corporate world for quite some time as like the corporate spouse and working music around like this as a stay-home mom, which was
Uh-huh.
really my full-time job. But I can't let it go, and it's fun to keep your hand in the game. So all of a sudden, it became really practical for me to do so. But the model I had in mind, if I was to be corporate mom and corporate wife, um, I was really working to try to put a lot of my work during the business day.
Right.
And the kids are at school and spouse is working, and then have that family time at night. So that's a lot of how G Sharp, the Google Choir, arose, and then they got reorged. And I thought, and I started thinking about this. And there's a convenience part to participating in stuff on your lunch break. People will arrange to go to the gym. And so I was thinking like, oh, one day a week, don't go to the gym, come feed your soul with choir and stuff. So I started looking at a choir that would be mine instead of like the Google staff choir. And it's like, well, how about anybody? You don't have to be a Googler to come sing over lunch. And I ended up attracting folks who are double dipping on their nighttime choirs. And it's like I ended up with this like auditioned choir that I didn't have to audition because the different time of day made it really good. I got a lot of retirees that don't want to drive at night.
Uh-huh.
Had a lot of the Googlers that came over anyway as they got reorged because they wanted to sing with their friends. Um, Couple of other stay-home moms that are looking for some way to connect with their own individual interests. And down the street there's drop-off childcare, drop them off, pick them up. It was awesome. And my thought was that there would be like East Side Wings. We'd have the Bellevue chapter and the Kirkland chapter and the Redmond chapter. I hope someone does this. Um, and Seattle or Renton or whatever, and everybody would have their own repertoire, and then we'd come together and amassed couple numbers or something, and some kind of tuition where like tuition includes if you want to go to other rehearsals too,
That
some
sounds
kind of thing.
fabulous. That
Yeah,
sounds
but like
fabulous.
corporate lunch is kind of dead right now, as is corporate life. Everything is different now, and I live
Yeah,
further away now. So we're gonna figure out what becomes of East Side
that's
Mid-Basin.
right. What happens
So
next? We'll see.
yeah, it's a new chapter.
So you recently returned from a trip to Maine, which for you is state number 50 to visit. So that is quite an accomplishment. I still have a handful on my list. So in your journeys through the states of the US, what were some memorable places that you would recommend?
Oh man. Okay, well, Maine is beautiful, and I don't think necessarily, man, I want to have a great beach vacation. I'm going to Maine. But I am now. Like, man, you want a great beach vacation? Go to Maine. The
Hmm.
Maine coast is gorgeous, and they're just beautiful and sweet little towns and very Washington in some way.
Oh yeah.
There's, craggy rocks and outcroppings, and the coast is really interesting. And I'm kind of used to Virginia Beach being kind of a Washington, D.C. type gal, and Virginia Beach is like big stripe of sand, face the ocean. Maine's a little more interesting, coves and nooks and crannies, and real beach experience. I thought that was just beautiful. Love Boston. That was a great place to plant with kids and no car. We walked all over the
Oh,
place.
nice.
We got to we drove through North Dakota in a camper a couple times because if you want to go anywhere, you drive through North Dakota, it seems, if you live in Washington. And I'm not sure there's a destination there, but if you ever wanted to know what North Dakota is all about, it's sunflowers, bees, and oil rigs.
Hmm.
Miles of sunflowers, sometimes oil rigs, and then you'd see these white boxes close to the highway. Why do they do that? And then you hit bees on the windshield. Oh, move those guys in, but I'm sure it's convenience.
Yeah.
Um, and I don't know, recommendation. Let's see.
Give us one
Oh,
more.
Mackinac Island, Michigan.
Mackinac
No
Island.
cars allowed.
Wow.
Lots of fudge.
Lots of fun.
Yeah,
I'm there. I'm there.
it's awesome. Yeah.
All right. I got one more question for you before you take a quick break. Who is another living composer that you think that we should all go check out?
Ooh, boy. Let's see. Another living composer you should all go check out. I'll cross genre here. I'm going to say Brandy Carlisle.
Okay.
And she's local girl here for us, but she has some things to say, and with the commercial element to her music, she has collaborators helping her, of
Uh-huh.
course, to orchestrate and put stuff on. But
What genre is Brandy?
I think like roots rock or country rock. It's some kind of Americana.
Okay.
She says she can't get the country out of her voice. But she's kind of Joni Mitchell re-envisioned and maybe even self-proclaimed as such. So
Hmm.
there's a little bit of that ping. But
All right. Well, we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to listen to some of Laurie's compositions. Hey, Steve here. I want to take just a moment of our time together to tell you about the easiest way to make and host a podcast. It's called Anchor. I use Anchor to make and host Movable Dough, and I've been extremely happy with the experience. They have creation tools on the site that help you create, record, publish, and share your podcast to multiple podcast streaming sources, including Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and more. The best part, it's absolutely free. No monthly cost, no hidden fees. So if you've been thinking about making a podcast, and you know you have, download the Anchor app today or visit anchor.fm to get started. Thanks for listening, and let's get back to Movable Dough. Welcome back. I'm talking today with Laurie de Leon. We're going to start first today with 3 American folk songs for Mary. So these are short carols for the Virgin Mary, highlighting the experience of motherhood and divinity. On your website, you write that you often seek to highlight undersung female themes in music. How does this set of pieces fit into that idea?
well, when I was a new mom, I would do a lot of nursing, and it's a lot of sitting still, and 1 out of every 3 hours or 1 out of every 4 hours or something, 24/7, I'm sitting and rocking a baby, and maybe I'm singing something or I'm listening to something if I'm really lucky. And I really started to understand viscerally the role of the lullaby. And lullabies, if we're thinking of large choral works or large any kind of works, they're really natural for second movements. They're slow and sweet. Do we program lullabies? Why not? And then I look out into music, and there are women represented and there are men represented, but there seems to be this mom-shaped hole. Where are the moms at? And I know where we're at. We're sequestered, meeting needs for a season, right?
Yeah.
And it's hard to contribute and do other things at that time. But Alice Parker raised 4 children after losing her husband early, and she would talk about washing the dishes and singing and having this kind of like physical movement, associated, and really would describe also the process of composition not necessarily requiring pencil and paper. You can work out a lot mentally. And so I started thinking about like female family themes. There's a lot of a lot of grunt work and housework. And again, my experience was suburban wife for a long time. And there's a lot of pick up and clean up and teach the kids and lullaby and endless, ceaseless rocking where heavens, do not change rhythm or your baby will wake up and you will have to do it again from the beginning for 30 minutes. So there's a desperation and consistency, which was really interesting. And I think of that as a feminine theme because that was my own experience of it. And, the pick up, put away song and the dumb little things that we sing. I like to eat the parfait, then I have a great day. And when I have a great day, I like to eat the parfait.
That's awesome.
And these are the things that I will never get to publish or write. And I just sung the parfait song on your podcast.
I love it. So
But,
what can you tell me about these 3 pieces in particular?
So the Cherry Tree Carol, in the true nature of folk music, does not have a set lyric or a set melody that goes with it. And in researching it, found like 3 or 4 or 5 different versions that are just notated and then field recordings. And so I got to kind of make my own version. Is it authentic? Sure, in the sense that I am singing our nation's music and
Yeah.
my version counts as much as anyone's. Sure. Is it composed? Okay. But there's this kind of mysticism and of it. There's a very human quality where Mary and Joseph are having a spat where she's pregnant, they're not married, and he's like, oh yeah, well, let the daddy of that baby gather cherries for you. She asks him for cherries and says, oh really, the child's father needs to do that. And so then what happens? The tree bends over down to her level because I'm sure she's very pregnant. There's no climbing trees here, and she's picking the cherries because the tree bends over. And so the father of the baby did indeed give her cherries. And so in setting this, I got to kind of do some of these things that seem mystical to me. And this is where I used some interlacing parallel fifths and this ooh-ah kind of accompaniment and to highlight those. It's an interesting answer to that question. Oh yeah, where's the dad? Where's he at? Here. So.
All right. Well, we are going to listen here to 3 American folk songs for Mary. right, our next piece today is The Wind That Shakes the Barley. So this piece centers around a young Wexford rebel during the Irish Rebellion of 1798. So I've actually set another piece that dealt with the same event, the Croppy Boy. So I was interested in this piece. I know you've worked with folk music frequently. So is this an original composition or an arrangement of an existing tune, or where did this come from?
It's an arrangement of an existing tune. And the way I first heard it was a traveling folk singer
Hmm.
who talked about singing this in an IRA bar and standing up on the table and belting it out. And so I bought his CD after hearing him, and he was singing it. And having no liner notes ahead of me, I set my version the way I understood his lyrics to be, without necessarily researching what the lyrics were.
Huh.
So it's interesting now to find that I think maybe I would not do it the same way again. But in some ways, my arrangement is the hallmark of the oral tradition, which
Oh,
is folk
sure.
music. But it's a cool story that the barley is the seeds that were carried in the pockets of the soldiers for rations, and when they die, the barley would grow. And
Hmm.
so the fields of barley are like this living tomb in some ways. And so, in thinking about writing that, I have a lot of two against three in the accompaniment, and I'm just thinking of like wind and patterns of grain, and how that
Yeah.
goes. It's not very ordered, but it is. Um, and then there's a death in the middle of Wind That Shakes the Barley, but it's not who you think. And I had great fun with that. And that's actually what ended up impressing Walton. They're like, oh. So I'm convinced that was important, but
All right. Well, we are now going to listen to The Wind That Shakes the Barley, here performed by the Oregon State University Chamber Choir. All right, our next piece today is Fragile. This is for mezzo soprano and string orchestra, although a SATB version is being released soon, I understand.
Mhm.
So to me, this piece seemed to have started out with ideas of sort of, toxic fragility, the ability that humans have to get easily offended, especially in areas of politics. But later, the idea sort of shifted to the idea of human fragility or the fragility of life. Am I sort of on the right path with this?
I think so. Yeah, and the beauty of poetry is what is it about? What does it mean to you? So, but I do think so. And they were talking about the relationship, I think, of like the birds in the nest
Mm-hmm.
and the bodies that have been buried. That there's a nurturing of children in some way, but what about the children past? You know, is the bird covering them in the nest, or is the bird covering them in the ground, and like this sort of preciousness and this memory in some way? So that's what it means to me. So it's a hard concept, I think, anytime you have to sing about death.
Yeah.
But it's so like this is really an important thing for us, and it was a fun exercise to kind of put different feels into this. There's a rocking motion, the lullaby comes back, and this nurturing kind of thing, and this sort of this whole tone that rises consistently and repeatedly through the piece. In the end, it doesn't rise, it settles on the lower tone and ends in a different key. And trying to work to tonicize that so that we would accept that as the new resolution that does not rise.
Yeah.
And just thinking about the nest and the grave and all those things. But
Oh, that's great. I had just this morning of the day that we're doing this interview, I actually just found out that a friend of mine from high school passed away. And so the fragile human life is something that's really sort of resonating with me today. So thank you
yeah,
for this
I'm
piece.
sorry. Yeah.
All right. Well, we are going to listen to Fragile here performed by the Moravian Philharmonic with Liana Sass as mezzo soprano. All right. Our last piece today, Nothing Gold Can Stay, for two-part choir and piano. So this is a really new piece. You were commissioned to write this for the Northwest ACDA Summer Institute just this past summer in 2022. As a Northwest teacher, I love the fact that you said anyone who attended the Summer Institute can use this piece this year with their choirs at no additional expense. So I plan to use it with my middle school singers this fall. So
Yay.
if I were to play this segment of the podcast for them, what would you tell them about the piece that would help them connect to it?
Oh, this is great. Okay. So nothing gold can stay. I like to think that poetry is really not only talking about what it's talking about, but it's talking about something else as well. This whole poem is about nature. Nature's first green is gold, like a seed, right? That's the first
Mm-hmm.
green. The hardest hue to hold. Okay, I'm listening now. Why is that so hard? I see gold everywhere, and then the poem goes on to describe, the growth, and then all of a sudden, the leaves have turned colors and they can't stay because then inevitably they fall. So, are we really talking about nature? Is this poem really about that? Or are we talking about life and death and things in general? And we have these kind of rare, beautiful things that come through, but they're all part of this cycle and this process, and hopefully this is encouraging that we're not just talking about death because, death, but that can't stay either. Nothing dead can stay there either because after the leaf falls, then we've got spring again, and the circle of life. So anyway, but this is a circle of life song, if nothing else.
I love that. I love that. Well, kids, I hope you were listening. All right. We are now going to listen to Nothing Gold Can Stay.
Nature's first green is gold, her hardest you told. Her early leaves the flower, but only so now. Nature's first green is gold, her hardest you told. Her early leaves the flower, but only so now. Then leaves subsides to leaves subsides to leave. So hidden sank to hidden sank to grief. So dawn goes down, so dawn goes down today. Nothing gold can stay. 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 Nothing gold can stay.
right. Well, Laurie, what are you working on now that you can tell us about?
Oh, I am working. I'm working on writing a couple of original songs that my garage band can play.
Okay.
And so I'm kind of out of, I'm not working on a choral piece right now. I'm working on those. And I'm also, I guess, I'm working on some lyrics to trade with another composer on the East Coast, Mark Boyle. And he wrote some lyrics for me. And so our plan, although it's evolving, our plan is to trade texts and then write the music for the others ensemble and then trade back to perform those.
Oh, interesting.
And we had originally envisioned kind of a multi-movement work, like a 10-minute thing, and we're scaling down now to octavo length, um, which happens, in
Yeah.
pandemics and things like that. But yeah, so ultimately we'll get to compose or get to work with an ensemble on our own text to each other's music.
Oh,
So
that sounds like a lot of fun.
I've been thinking a lot about words and lyrics right now, both for the rock band and for the East Coast Choir. So,
Well, if my listeners want to learn more about you, where are you located online?
I have a website, www.lauriedeleone.com, two N's and an E, Leonne.com. I'm kind of a crazy Facebook booker. And my philosophy is generally if we have 100 friends in common, you're now my friend. But I publish things like musical things or pictures of my cat, things that are pretty inert in general. But every now and then I'll throw musical things out there. So yeah, or you can find me around Seattle. I love this community. It is just so wonderfully collegial. Um, yeah, there's always something to do around here, and we all support each other to the best of my experience. So,
All right. Well, hey, listeners out there, make sure you also join us on social media to continue the conversation. I really do want to hear from you, whether it's a comment on an episode, a funny story, or just a music meme. Share it with us all. We're on Twitter at Moveable Dough, Instagram at Moveable Dough Podcast, and Facebook on the group Moveable Dough Listeners. We'd love to see you there. Well, Laurie, it's been a lot of fun to talk to you today. Thank you for joining me on Moveable Dough.
thank you, Steve. Thanks for the invite. Go dogs. Yeah.
My guest today was composer Dr. Laurie DeLeon. If you have a recommendation for a future guest or an idea for the show, please email me at moveabledough@gmail.com. This is Steve Danielson. Keep the music moving.